In the vast and silent emptiness of space, the human warship Eclipse drifted silently through the void. It was a sleek vessel, its surface gleaming faintly under the distant light of a dying star. On the command deck, Captain Ryan Dawson stood, tall, his sharp eyes scanning the array of screens and monitors before him. The crew moved with quiet efficiency, their faces tense but focused. They were deep in uncharted territory, a region of space forbidden by Earth's high command due to its proximity to the heart of the Galactic Empire. Ryan shifted his weight slightly as he glanced at Lieutenant Grace Miller, his second in command. She was seated at her station, her fingers gliding over the controls of the ship's advanced sensors. Her blonde hair was tied back neatly, and her expression betrayed no emotion, though Ryan knew she felt the same unease that hung thick in the air. "Anything yet?" Ryan asked, his voice calm but firm. He trusted Grace's judgment, and her silence spoke volumes. "Not yet, sir," Grace replied without looking up. "We're entering the designated coordinates now. If there's anything out there, we'll find it soon." The mission had been handed down directly from Earth Central Command, shrouded in secrecy and urgency. The orders were clear. Investigate unusual energy readings detected in this sector. What those readings meant, or why they warranted sending a single warship into such dangerous territory, was left unsaid. Ryan had learned long ago not to question orders, but this time, doubt gnawed at him. Something about the mission felt off, like a puzzle missing too many pieces. The Eclipse continued its slow advance, its engines humming softly as it pushed deeper into the unknown. The crew worked in near silence, the only sounds being the occasional beep of a console or the low murmur of voices exchanging updates. Ensign Daniel Carter, a young man with a mop of dark hair and an eager demeanor, sat at the communications station. His eyes darted between the screens in front of him, searching for any sign of activity. Suddenly, the quiet was shattered. A loud alarm blared across the bridge, startling everyone. Red warning lights flashed overhead, bathing the room in an ominous glow. "Captain," Daniel called out, his voice rising above the din. "We've got something on sensors. Big. Really big." Ryan stepped forward quickly, his boots clicking against the metal floor. "Put it on screen," he ordered. A moment later, the main view screen flickered to life, revealing a massive shape looming ahead of them. It was a colossal warship, easily 10 times the size of the Eclipse. Its hull was dark and menacing, bristling with weapons turrets and glowing with faint blue energy fields. The insignia of the Galactic Empire was emblazoned proudly on its side, a stark reminder of who they were dealing with. Grace let out a soft breath, her hands hovering over her controls. "That's an Imperial dreadnought," she said quietly. "They must have been waiting for us." Ryan clenched his jaw. This wasn't part of the plan. He turned to Daniel. "Are they hailing us?" Daniel nodded, his fingers moving rapidly over the console. "Yes, sir. Patching it through now." The screen shifted, again, and the face of an Imperial officer appeared. He was a stern-looking man with sharp features and cold, calculating eyes. His uniform was immaculate, adorned with medals and insignias that spoke of his high rank. Behind him, the bridge of the dreadnought was bustling with activity, though none of the crew paid any attention to the camera. "Human warship," the officer began, his voice dripping with authority and disdain. "Identify yourself and explain your presence in this restricted sector immediately." Ryan straightened, meeting the man's gaze with unwavering confidence. "This is Captain Ryan Dawson of the Eclipse. We are conducting routine reconnaissance operations under direct orders from Earth Central Command. Your sector was not marked as claimed territory in our navigation charts." The Imperial officer's lips curled into a sneer. "Your ignorance does not excuse your trespassing. You have entered sovereign space of the Galactic Empire without permission. Prepare for boarding, or face destruction." Before Ryan could respond, the transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the screen blank. The bridge fell silent once more, the weight of the situation pressing down on everyone. The crew exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to do next. Ryan turned to Grace, his mind racing. "Status report. Can we outrun them?" Grace shook her head, her expression grim. Their engines are far superior to ours. Even with full burn, we wouldn't make it out of range before they catch us. And their weapons could tear us apart before we even get close to escape velocity. Ryan nodded slowly. He had expected as much. The Eclipse was fast and agile, but it was no match for the sheer firepower of an Imperial dreadnought. Still, surrendering wasn't an option, not when they didn't know what the Empire wanted with them. "Ensign Carter," Ryan said, turning to Daniel. "Can you scramble their targeting systems? Buy us some time?" Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "I can try, sir, but it won't last long. They'll adapt quickly." "Do it," Ryan ordered, "and prepare all defensive measures. We might not be able to win this fight, but we sure as hell aren't going down without one." The crew sprang into action, their movements swift and precise. Weapon systems came online, shields were raised, and countermeasures were readied. Meanwhile, Daniel worked furiously at his station, sending out bursts of electronic interference, designed to confuse the enemy's targeting arrays. On the view screen, the dreadnought loomed closer, its massive form filling the frame. Tiny streaks of light shot out from its sides, energy bolts fired by its weapons turrets. The Eclipse shuddered violently as several impacts struck its shields, causing sparks to fly across the bridge. "Hold steady," Ryan shouted, gripping the railing in front of him. "Keep evasive maneuvers going." Grace's hands danced across her controls, guiding the ship through a series of tight turns and rolls. The Eclipse twisted and spun, narrowly avoiding the worst of the incoming fire. Despite the chaos, the crew remained focused, each member doing their part to keep the ship intact. For several tense minutes, the battle raged on. The Eclipse absorbed hit after hit, its shields holding but weakening with every strike. Smoke began to fill the bridge as systems overloaded and circuits fried. Yet somehow the small human warship managed to stay one step ahead of its much larger opponent. Finally, a break came. One of the energy bolts struck a critical system aboard, the dreadnought, causing a brief disruption in its firing pattern. Seizing the opportunity, Ryan gave the order to jump to hyperspace. "Engage hyperdrive," he barked. "Now!" The Eclipse surged forward, its engines roaring to life as it slipped into the safety of faster-than-light travel. The stars outside stretched into long streaks of light, and within moments the dreadnought disappeared from view. As the ship settled into its new course, the crew let out a collective sigh of relief. Ryan slumped into his chair, exhaustion washing over him. They had survived, for now. But the encounter had raised more questions than answers. Why had the Empire been waiting for them? What did they want? And most importantly, how had they known the Eclipse would be here? Ryan glanced at Grace, who was already running diagnostics on the damaged systems. "We need to figure out what's really going on," he said quietly, "because I don't think this is over." Grace nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Agreed, sir. Whatever's out there, it's bigger than just us." For now, though, the Eclipse was safe. But Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were merely postponing the inevitable. The Eclipse emerged from hyperspace in the shadow of a jagged asteroid field, its battered hull groaning faintly as the ship settled into position. The crew worked tirelessly to assess the damage sustained during their encounter with the Imperial dreadnought. Smoke still lingered in the air on the command deck, and several consoles flickered sporadically, their circuits fried by the relentless barrage of enemy fire. Despite the chaos, Captain Ryan Dawson remained calm, his sharp eyes scanning the room as he took stock of the situation. Ryan turned to Chief Engineer Olivia Bennett, who had just arrived on the bridge. Her dark hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, and her hands were smudged with grease from working on the ship's systems. "Status report," he said, his tone firm but measured. Olivia wiped her hands on a rag before speaking. "Shields are down to 20%, sir. We've got minor hull breaches in sections 3 and 5, but they're contained for now. Hyperdrive is stable, but we'll need at least 12 hours to repair the damage if we want to make another jump safely." Ryan nodded grimly. 12 hours was a luxury they might not have. The Empire's forces were relentless, and it wouldn't take long for them to track the Eclipse's trajectory. He glanced at Lieutenant Grace Miller, who stood nearby, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Grace, what about our sensors? Can we detect any pursuit? Grace shook her head, her expression tense. Nothing yet, sir, but that doesn't mean they aren't coming. Their technology is far more advanced than ours. They could be masking their approach. Ryan let out a slow breath, his mind racing. Something about the entire situation didn't add up. Earth Central Command had sent them into Imperial territory without warning or adequate preparation. It was reckless, bordering on suicidal. And then there was the matter of the energy readings that had brought them here in the first place. What exactly were they supposed to find? Captain? Ensign Daniel Carter interrupted, breaking Ryan's train of thought. The young communications officer held a datapad in his hand, his brow furrowed. I've been analyzing the coordinates we were given. These aren't random. This sector has been flagged as restricted for years, but there's no official record of why. Someone went through a lot of trouble to keep it hidden. Ryan frowned. Hidden from whom? Us? Daniel hesitated before nodding. Possibly. Or maybe even from the Empire itself. Whoever gave us these orders wanted us to come here. For a reason. Ryan's jaw tightened. Betrayal wasn't something he liked to entertain, but the evidence was mounting. If someone within Earth's ranks had deliberately sent them into harm's way, the implications were dire. He turned to Grace. What do you think? Could this be a setup? Grace's lips pressed into a thin line. It's possible, sir. But if it is, we're missing the bigger picture. Why send us here? What's so important about this sector that someone would risk exposing us to the Empire? Before Ryan could respond, Olivia spoke up, her voice tinged with urgency. Sir, I've been running scans on the energy readings we detected earlier. They're not natural. Whatever's generating them is artificial and incredibly powerful. Ryan straightened, his attention snapping to Olivia. Artificial? You're certain? She nodded. Yes, sir. The signature matches nothing in our database. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. If I had to guess, I'd say it's some kind of alien technology. The room fell silent as the weight of Olivia's words sank in. Alien technology. Hidden in Imperial space. It was no wonder the Empire had been lying in wait. But who else knew about it? And why had Earth sent the Eclipse to investigate? Ryan turned back to the view screen, which displayed the desolate expanse of the asteroid field outside. We need answers, he said finally, his voice low but firm. And until we get them, we stay off the grid. Olivia, how soon can you boost our cloaking systems? If we're going back in there, we'll need every advantage. Olivia hesitated, then nodded. I'll get my team on it right away, Captain. But even with upgrades, we won't last long against their firepower. Not unless we find a way to level the playing field. Ryan acknowledged her with a curt nod. Do what you can. In the ya. Meantime, Grace, I want you to dig deeper into those energy readings. Find out where they're coming from and what they're hiding. Grace nodded, already turning back to her console. Understood, sir. As the crew dispersed to carry out their tasks, Ryan retreated to his quarters, his mind heavy with unanswered questions. He sat at his desk, staring at the blank screen of his personal terminal. The betrayal gnawed at him, a bitter taste in the back of his throat. Someone within Earth's government had sent them into this mess, but who? And why? He opened a secure channel to Earth Central Command, typing out a brief message requesting clarification on their mission parameters. Before sending it, he hesitated, his finger hovering over the transmit button. Would anyone even respond? Or would his message disappear into the void, ignored like everything else? With a sigh, he hit send. Only time would tell if anyone was listening. Hours passed as the crew worked around the clock to prepare the Eclipse for another incursion into Imperial space. Olivia and her team labored tirelessly in the engineering bay, modifying the ship's cloaking systems to mask their presence more effectively. Meanwhile, Grace and Daniel pored over sensor data, trying to pinpoint the source of the mysterious energy readings. Finally, late into the ship's artificial night cycle, Grace approached Ryan on the command deck. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and unease. Captain, I think I've found something. she said, holding out a datapad. Ryan took the device, his eyes scanning the information displayed on its screen. The energy readings were concentrated in a specific area, a derelict structure floating silently amidst the asteroids. Its design was unmistakably alien, its spires jutting outward like skeletal fingers. Faint pulses of light emanated from its surface, suggesting it was still active despite its ancient appearance. "This could be it," Ryan murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "Whatever the Empire's after, it's here." Grace nodded. "If we're going to figure out what's really going on, we need to get inside that structure. But we'll have to move quickly. Once the Empire realizes we're still alive, they'll come looking for us." Ryan set the datapad down, his resolve hardening. "Then we don't give them the chance. Prep a shuttle team. We're going in." Grace hesitated, concern flickering across her face. "Are you sure, sir? It's risky. We don't know what we're walking into." Ryan met her gaze, his expression unyielding. "We don't have a choice. If the Empire gets their hands on whatever's inside that thing, it could change everything. For better or worse, we're the only ones who can stop them." Grace nodded reluctantly, knowing he was right. "Understood, sir. I'll assemble the team." As Grace left the bridge, Ryan turned back to the view screen, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. The weight of leadership bore down on him, heavier than ever before. Every decision he made carried consequences, not just for his crew, but for the future of humanity itself. The Eclipse slipped quietly out of the asteroid field, its cloaking, systems fully operational thanks to Olivia's efforts. The alien structure loomed ahead, its eerie silhouette casting long shadows across the surrounding rocks. Ryan led the shuttle team personally, accompanied by Grace and Daniel, along with a small contingent of security personnel. As they approached the structure, the air grew thick with anticipation. The shuttle landed softly on a flat surface near one of the spires, and the team disembarked cautiously, their boots crunched against the metallic ground, each step echoing eerily in the silence. Ryan activated his helmet's flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness as they moved toward an entrance. The doorway was massive, its edges adorned, with intricate carvings that glowed faintly in response to their presence. It slid open with a low hum, revealing a labyrinthine interior bathed in dim, pulsating light. Inside, the air felt charged, almost alive. Strange symbols lined the walls, shifting and changing as though watching their every move. The team advanced carefully, their weapons drawn, but not raised. They weren't sure what, or who, they might encounter. After several tense minutes, they reached a large chamber at the heart of the structure. In the center stood a pedestal, atop which rested a crystalline device glowing with an otherworldly energy. Around it, smaller devices floated in midair, their surfaces etched with the same runes as the walls. Daniel stepped forward, his eyes wide with awe. This is incredible," he breathed. "It's some kind of power source. If we could harness this technology." Before he could finish, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. A low hum filled the chamber, growing louder with each passing second. Suddenly, a holographic figure materialized before them, a tall humanoid being with translucent skin and piercing eyes. The being spoke in a language none of them understood, its voice resonant and commanding. Grace adjusted her translator device, frowning as she tried to decipher the message. After a moment, she looked up, her expression grave. "It's a warning," she said softly. "About a weapon, one capable of destroying entire star systems." Ryan's blood ran cold. They had stumbled upon something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. The implications were staggering. If the Empire acquired this weapon, the balance of power in the galaxy would collapse. The Eclipse slipped quietly back into the contested sector, its enhanced cloaking systems rendering it nearly invisible to the prying sensors of the Galactic Empire. The crew moved with practiced precision, their faces tense but resolute. Captain Ryan Dawson stood on the command deck, his eyes fixed on the view screen as the alien structure came into view once more. It loomed in the distance, its spires jagged and ominous against the backdrop of stars. Despite its ancient appearance, the structure pulsed faintly with energy, a silent testament to the power hidden within. Ryan turned to Lieutenant Grace Miller, who was seated at her station, her fingers gliding over the controls of the ship's advanced sensors. "How long until we're in range?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. 5 minutes, sir," Grace replied without looking up. Her expression was focused, her mind already calculating the risks of their mission. She knew that even with the cloaking system, they were walking a razor-thin line. One wrong move and the Empire would descend upon them like a storm. Ensign Daniel Carter sat nearby at the communications console, his dark hair falling slightly over his forehead as he monitored the surrounding space for any sign of Imperial activity. "No ships detected yet, Captain," he reported, his voice tinged with cautious optimism. "But we should stay ready." Ryan nodded, his gaze shifting to Chief Engineer Olivia Bennett, who was overseeing the modifications to the Eclipse's main cannon. "Olivia, how's the weapon coming along?" Olivia wiped her hands on a rag before responding. "Almost done, sir. We've rerouted power from non-essential systems to boost the beam's intensity. Should be enough to take out the structure if we can get a clean shot." Ryan clenched his jaw. A clean shot was easier said than done. The alien construct was surrounded by a dense field of asteroids, making navigation treacherous. Any misstep could alert the Empire to their presence or worse, leave the Eclipse vulnerable to attack. As the ship drew closer, Grace spoke up again. "Captain, I'm picking up faint energy fluctuations coming from the structure. It's like it knows we're here." Ryan frowned. "Explain." Grace hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "The energy readings are reacting to our proximity. It's possible the structure has some kind of defense mechanism. If we don't act fast, it might activate." Ryan's mind raced. They had no margin for error. Every second they delayed increased the risk of discovery. He turned to the rest of the crew. "Stay sharp. We go in, take the shot, and get out. No delays. Understood?" The crew nodded in unison, their expressions grim but determined. Ryan trusted them implicitly, but he couldn't shake the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Too much rested on this mission, not just the lives of his crew, but the fate of countless star systems. The Eclipse maneuvered into position, its engines humming softly as it aligned itself for the critical strike. Olivia gave the final adjustments. To the main cannon, her hands steady despite the tension in the air. "Ready when you are, Captain," she said, her voice unwavering. Ryan took a deep breath, then gave the order. "Fire." The ship shuddered as the main cannon discharged, sending a concentrated beam of energy streaking toward the alien structure. For a moment it seemed as though nothing had happened. Then, with a deafening roar, the structure erupted in a blinding explosion of light and energy. The shockwave rippled outward, shaking the Eclipse violently despite its distance. "Shields holding," Grace called out, her voice rising above the chaos. "We're clear." Ryan exhaled sharply, relief washing over him, but only for a moment. The explosion hadn't gone unnoticed. Alarms began blaring across the bridge as multiple contacts appeared on the sensors. "Multiple ships incoming," Daniel shouted, his fingers flying over the console. "It's the Empire." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Get us out of here." The Eclipse surged forward, its engines roaring to life as it dodged through the asteroid field. Imperial warships descended upon them like predators, their weapons firing relentlessly. Energy bolts streaked past the Eclipse, narrowly missing its hull as Grace guided the ship through a series of tight turns and rolls. "Hold steady," Ryan barked, gripping the railing in front of him. "Keep moving." The crew worked tirelessly, their movements synchronized and precise. Weapon systems fired countermeasures, scattering bursts of electronic interference to confuse the enemy's targeting arrays. Meanwhile, Olivia monitored the ship's systems, ensuring that the engines remained online despite the strain. For several tense minutes, the Eclipse danced through the chaos, narrowly avoiding destruction at every turn. Sparks flew across the bridge as another impact struck the shields, causing them to flicker dangerously. "Shields at 30%, Grace warned, her voice strained but steady. Ryan clenched his fists, his mind racing. They couldn't keep this up forever. Sooner or later, the Empire would land a fatal blow. But there was still one card left to play. "Daniel, send out a decoy signal," Ryan ordered. "Draw them away from us." Daniel nodded, his fingers moving rapidly over the console. A moment later, a burst of false readings emanated from the eclipse, creating the illusion of multiple ships breaking off in different directions. The Imperial forces hesitated, their formations splitting as they scrambled to pursue the phantom targets. "Now!" Ryan shouted. "Jump to hyperspace!" The eclipse surged, forward once more, its hyperdrive engaging as it slipped into the safety of faster-than-light travel. The stars outside stretched into long streaks of light, and within moments the Imperial fleet disappeared from view. As the ship settled into its new course, the crew let out a collective sigh of relief. Smoke filled the air on the command deck, and several consoles sparked faintly, but the eclipse was intact for now. Ryan slumped into his chair, exhaustion washing over him. They had succeeded in destroying the alien structure, but at what cost? The Empire would not forget this. And whoever had sent them into this mess remained an unanswered question. Grace approached him, her expression thoughtful. "Sir, do you think we've bought ourselves any time?" Ryan shook his head slowly. "Not much. The Empire will come after us harder than ever now. But at least we stopped them from getting their hands on that weapon." Grace nodded, though her face reflected the gravity of the situation. "What do we do next?" Ryan leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant. "We find out who betrayed us and why. Someone wanted us caught in that trap. Until we know who, we can't trust anyone, not even Earth Central Command." Grace hesitated before speaking. "Do you think they'll try to silence us?" Ryan met her gaze, his expression hardening. "They already have. That message I sent earlier? No response. Either they're ignoring us, or they never intended for us to come back." Seal. Implication hung heavy in the air. If Earth Central Command had deliberately sent them into Imperial territory, the stakes were far higher than anyone had realized. The eclipse wasn't just a pawn in a political game, it was a liability. Ryan stood abruptly, his decision made. "We need to regroup, repair the ship, gather intel, and prepare for whatever comes next. Because one thing's for sure, the Empire won't stop until they've wiped us out." Grace nodded, her resolve matching his own. "Understood, sir. We'll be ready." As the crew dispersed to carry out their tasks, Ryan turned back to the view screen, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. The weight of leadership bore down on him, heavier than ever before. Every decision he made carried consequences, not just for his crew but for the future of humanity itself. For now, the eclipse was safe. But Ryan knew that their victory was only temporary. The Empire would return, stronger and more determined than ever, and when they did, the eclipse would need to be prepared to face them head-on. The eclipse drifted silently through the void, its battered hull a testament to the battles it had endured. The crew worked tirelessly to repair the damage sustained during their escape from the Empire's forces. Smoke lingered in the air on the command deck, and sparks occasionally flew from damaged consoles, but the ship was holding together. For now, Captain Ryan Dawson stood at the center of the chaos, his sharp eyes scanning the room as he assessed the situation. Ryan turned to Chief Engineer Olivia Bennett, who was overseeing repairs in the engineering bay. "Status report," he said, his voice firm but measured. Olivia wiped her hands on a rag before responding. "Shields are down to 15%, sir. We've patched the hull breaches, but the hyperdrive is still unstable. It'll take at least 24 hours to get it fully operational again." Ryan nodded grimly. 24 hours was a luxury they might not have. The Empire's forces were relentless, and it wouldn't take long for them to track the eclipse's trajectory. He glanced at Lieutenant Grace Miller, who was seated at her station, her fingers gliding over the controls of the ship's sensors. "Grace, what about pursuit? Any sign of them?" Grace shook her head, her expression tense. Nothing yet, sir. But that doesn't mean they aren't coming. Their technology is far more advanced than ours. They could be masking their approach. Tinty clenched his jaw. The Empire would come for them, of that he was certain. The destruction of the alien structure had been a temporary victory, but it had also painted a target on the Eclipse's back. Whoever had sent them into Imperial territory had set them up for failure, and now they were paying the price. Captain, Ensign Daniel Carter interrupted, breaking Ryan's train of thought. The young communications officer held a datapad in his hand, his brow furrowed. I've been analyzing the energy readings from the alien structure before we destroyed it. There's something strange. Ryan frowned. Strange how? Daniel hesitated before speaking. The energy signature, it wasn't just artificial. It was alive, or at least it seemed to be. The patterns match nothing in our database, but they're similar to neural activity. Like the structure was thinking. Ryan's mind raced. A living weapon, a consciousness capable of destroying entire star systems. The implications were staggering. If the Empire had acquired such technology, they would have wielded it with devastating efficiency. Humanity's survival would have been impossible. We did the right thing, Ryan murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. But it won't stop them. They'll keep looking for answers, and when they find them, they'll come for us. Grace stepped forward, her expression thoughtful. Sir, what if the Empire isn't the only one looking for this technology? What if whoever sent us here knew about it and wanted us to destroy it? Ryan's gaze snapped to her. You think Earth, Central Command, sent us to cover their tracks? Grace nodded slowly. It's possible. If they knew about the weapon and couldn't control it, they might have decided to eliminate the threat. And us along with it. Ryan clenched his fists, anger simmering beneath the surface. Betrayal gnawed at him, a bitter taste in the back of his throat. Someone within Earth's ranks had sacrificed the Eclipse and its crew without hesitation. But why? And who? Before Ryan could respond, alarms blared across the bridge, startling everyone. Red warning lights flashed overhead, bathing the room in an ominous glow. Captain, Daniel shouted, his voice rising above the din. Multiple contacts incoming, it's the Empire. Ryan straightened, meeting the crew's worried gazes with unwavering confidence. Battle stations, prepare for evasive maneuvers. The Eclipse surged forward, its engines roaring to life as it slipped into the dense asteroid field nearby. Imperial warships descended upon them like predators, their weapons firing relentlessly. Energy bolts streaked past the Eclipse, narrowly, missing its hull as Grace guided the ship through a series of tight turns and rolls. Hold steady, Ryan barked, gripping the railing in front of him. Keep moving. The crew worked tirelessly, their movements synchronized and precise. Weapon systems fired countermeasures, scattering bursts of electronic interference to confuse the enemy's targeting arrays. Meanwhile, Olivia monitored the ship's systems, ensuring that the engines remained online despite the strain. For several tense minutes, the Eclipse danced through the chaos, narrowly avoiding destruction at every turn. Sparks flew across the bridge as another impact struck the shields, causing them to flicker dangerously. Shields at 10%, Grace warned, her voice strained but steady. Ryan clenched his fists, his mind racing. They couldn't keep this up forever. Sooner or later, the Empire would land a fatal blow, but there was still one card left to play. Daniel, send out a decoy signal, Ryan ordered. Draw them away from us. Daniel nodded, his fingers moving rapidly over the console. A moment later, a burst of false readings emanated from the Eclipse, creating the illusion of multiple ships breaking off in different directions. The Imperial forces hesitated, their formations splitting as they scrambled to pursue the phantom targets. Now! Ryan shouted. Jump to hyperspace! The Eclipse surged, forward once more, its hyperdrive engaging as it slipped into the safety of faster-than-light travel. The stars outside stretched into long streaks of light, and within moments the Imperial fleet disappeared from view. As the ship settled into its new course, the crew let out a collective sigh of relief. Smoke filled the air on the command deck, and several consoles sparked faintly, but the Eclipse was intact. For now. Ryan slumped into his chair, exhaustion washing over him. They had survived, for now. But the encounter had raised more questions than answers. Why had the Empire been waiting for them? What did they want? And most importantly, how had they known the eclipse would be here? Ryan glanced at Grace, who was already running diagnostics on the damaged systems. "We need to figure out what's really going on," he said quietly, "because I don't think this is over." Grace nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Agreed, sir. Whoever sent us here wanted us to fail. But why?" Ryan leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant. Maybe they didn't want us to succeed, or maybe they didn't want anyone to succeed. Either way, we're pawns in a game we don't understand. Grace hesitated before speaking. "What do we do next?" Ryan stood abruptly, his decision made. "We find out who betrayed us and why. Someone wanted us caught in that trap. Until we know who, we can't trust anyone, not even Earth Central Command." Grace nodded, her resolve matching his own. "Understood, sir. We'll be ready." As the crew dispersed to carry out their tasks, Ryan turned back to the view screen, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. The weight of leadership bore down on him, heavier than ever before. Every decision he made carried consequences, not just for his crew but for the future of humanity itself. For now, the eclipse was safe. But Ryan knew that their victory was only temporary. The Empire would return, stronger and more determined than ever. And when they did, the eclipse would need to be prepared to face them head-on. Ryan's thoughts turned to the alien structure they had destroyed. A living weapon. A consciousness capable of unthinkable destruction. Had they done the right thing by destroying it? Or had they merely delayed the inevitable? The questions haunted him, lingering like shadows in the corners of his mind. As the eclipse limped toward a remote outpost for repairs, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were merely postponing the inevitable. The Empire's thirst for power was insatiable, and humanity's place among the stars was more fragile than ever. But for now, they lived to fight another day. And that was enough. The eclipse drifted silently toward a remote outpost on the edge of known space, its damaged hull groaning faintly under the strain of long-distance travel. The crew worked tirelessly to keep the ship operational, their faces etched with exhaustion, but their resolve unshaken. Captain Ryan Dawson stood on the command deck, his sharp eyes scanning the array of screens and monitors before him. The outpost was their only hope for repairs and answers. As they approached the station, Ryan turned to Lieutenant Grace Miller, who was seated at her station, her fingers gliding over the controls of the ship's sensors. "Anything unusual?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Grace shook her head, though her expression remained tense. "No signs of Imperial activity in the area, sir. But that doesn't mean they aren't watching." Ryan nodded grimly. The Empire's reach was vast, and their spies were everywhere. Trusting even a remote outpost was risky, but they had no choice. The eclipse couldn't survive another encounter with the Empire in its current state. "Ensign Carter," Ryan said, turning to Daniel, who was monitoring communications. "Hail the outpost, let them know we're coming in for repairs." Daniel nodded and quickly sent out the transmission. Moments later, a response crackled through the speakers. A gruff voice answered, tinged with suspicion. "This is Outpost Theta 7, state your business." "This is Captain Ryan Dawson of the Eclipse," Ryan replied, his tone steady. "We're requesting docking clearance for emergency repairs. Our ship sustained heavy damage during an engagement with Imperial forces." There was a pause on the other end, followed by a reluctant acknowledgement. "Understood, Eclipse. You're cleared for docking. But be warned, we don't have much to spare." Ryan exhaled sharply. "Acknowledged. Thank you." As the Eclipse docked with the outpost, the crew prepared to disembark. The station was small and utilitarian, its corridors dimly lit and lined with rusted metal walls. A group of rough-looking technicians greeted them, their expressions wary but professional. Ryan stepped forward to meet them, flanked by Grace and Daniel. "I'm Captain Dawson," Ryan said, extending a hand. "We need repairs, fast, and discretion." The lead technician, a burly man with a thick beard, nodded curtly. "You'll get what you pay for, but if you're running from the Empire, you'd better not stay long. They've been sniffing around these parts lately." Ryan clenched his jaw. The Empire's presence was closer than he had hoped. "How close are they?" The technician shrugged. "Close enough to make us nervous. We've seen patrols in the area. If I were you, I'd patch up and leave as soon as possible." Ryan nodded, his mind racing. Time was against them. He turned to Grace. "Coordinate with their engineers. Prioritize the hyperdrive and shields. We can't afford any delays." Grace nodded and moved to speak with the technicians, her demeanor calm but focused. Meanwhile, Ryan turned to Daniel. "I want you to monitor communications. See if you can pick up anything about Imperial movements, or anything else unusual." Daniel hesitated. "Sir, do you think someone here might be working for the Empire?" Ryan's gaze hardened. "I don't know who to trust anymore. Just keep your eyes open." As the repairs began, Ryan made his way to the outpost's command center. It was a cramped room filled with outdated equipment, but it offered a view of the surrounding space. The outpost commander, a wiry man with sharp features and a weathered face, greeted him with a wary nod. "Captain Dawson," the commander said, his voice low. "What brings a warship like yours to a place like this?" Ryan didn't mince words. "We're running from the Empire, but we're also looking for answers. Someone sent us into Imperial territory deliberately, and I want to know why." The commander's expression darkened. "You're playing a dangerous game, Captain. The Empire doesn't take kindly to trespassers or survivors." Ryan leaned forward, his voice steady but urgent. "Do you know anything about a weapon hidden in Imperial space? Something powerful enough to destroy entire star systems?" The commander hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "Rumors," he said finally. "Stories about an ancient alien artifact capable of unimaginable destruction. But those are just tales, legends told to scare rookies." Ryan pressed on. "What if they're true? What if the Empire found it, or tried to?" The commander shook his head slowly. "If they did, it would change everything. The balance of power in the galaxy would collapse. Whoever controls that weapon would rule or destroy everything." Ryan's mind raced. The implications were staggering. If the Empire had been searching for the weapon, their pursuit of the Eclipse made even more sense. Destroying the alien structure had been the right decision, but it wouldn't stop them from trying again. "Commander," Ryan said, his voice low, "has anyone else come through here recently? Anyone asking about the same thing?" The commander frowned, then nodded. "A few weeks ago, a private vessel docked here. They claimed to be traders, but they were asking a lot of questions about Imperial territory, about ancient artifacts. They left in a hurry when word came of an Imperial patrol nearby." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Did they leave behind anything? Any clues about who they were working for?" The commander hesitated, then reached into a drawer and pulled out a small data chip. "They dropped this. I didn't look too closely, but it might be worth checking out." Ryan took the chip, his expression grim. "Thank you. This could be important." Back aboard the Eclipse, Ryan handed the data chip to Daniel, who inserted it into a console. The screen flickered to life, displaying a series of encrypted files. Daniel worked quickly to decrypt them, his brow furrowed in concentration. After several tense minutes, the files opened, revealing a trove of information. Maps, coordinates, and schematics filled the screen, along with fragments of intercepted communications. One name appeared repeatedly: Project Oblivion. Grace leaned over Daniel's shoulder, her eyes widening. "Project Oblivion? That sounds ominous." Ryan clenched his fists. "It's a code name for whatever they're after. Someone within Earth. Central Command is funding this operation. They're searching for the same weapon we destroyed." Daniel scrolled through the files, his expression growing darker. "Sir, there's more. These logs mention a shadow organization operating within the government. They're pulling strings, manipulating events to serve their own agenda." Ryan's mind raced. A shadow organization within Earth's ranks. A cabal willing to sacrifice the Eclipse and its crew to achieve their goals. The betrayal cut deeper than ever before. "We're being used," Ryan murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "But why? What do they stand to gain?" Grace spoke up, her tone cautious. "Power, sir. Control. If they can harness technology like that alien weapon, they won't need the Empire, or anyone else, to maintain dominance." Ryan nodded grimly. "And they'll stop at nothing to get it." As the repairs neared completion, Ryan gathered his senior officers in the briefing room. The mood was tense, the weight of their discovery hanging heavily in the air. "We know who's behind this," Ryan began, his voice firm. "A shadow organization within Earth Central Command. They sent us into Imperial territory to cover their tracks and to eliminate any threats to their plans." Grace frowned. "So what do we do now, go after them?" Ryan shook his head. "Not yet. We're outnumbered and outgunned. For now, our priority is survival. But we can't let them win. We need to gather evidence, expose their operation, and find allies who can help us fight back." Olivia spoke up, her voice steady. "Sir, the Empire will come for us again. And next time they'll be ready." Ryan met her gaze, his expression resolute. "Then we'll be ready too. We've faced impossible odds before, and we've survived. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." The crew nodded, their resolve matching his own. They were battered but unbroken, united by a shared purpose. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, but they had no intention of giving up. As the Eclipse prepared to leave the outpost, Ryan stood on the command deck, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. The weight of leadership bore down on him, heavier than ever before. Every decision he made carried consequences, not just for his crew, but for the future of humanity itself. For now, they lived to fight another day, and that was enough.